The BYU Cougars get their win of the season to date with a huge double overtime victory over Iowa State in Ames. Unlike last year, BYU faltered down the stretch but found a way to grind out the W. We're talking about it on Postcast.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And as always, thank you to all of you who are everydayers with us right here on your original daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. Postcast edition is BYU notches a major upset of number 10 Iowa State, 88-85 in double overtime in Ames, Iowa. And outset, I'll just say this. Officiating in college basketball, it's atrocious. And I say that across the board. I'm done talking about college basketball officiating. It is just it's a hiss and a byword. It's awful. Bigger point to be made is, how in the heck did BYU overcome? Did they get to 30 turnovers? No, 29 turnovers. 29 turnovers. And somehow BYU grinds out a victory over the Iowa State Cyclones. Biggest thing BYU can point to overcome that 29 turnover issue is the fact that they had 52 rebounds in this game. Let's see, we got 52-24 dominance on the glass. Keita, yes, his free throw shooting leaves a lot to be desired. 9 offensive rebounds. The plays that needed to happen when they needed to happen happened for the BYU Cougars. That's the simple fact of this is BYU came up clutch time and time again with crazy plays. Yes, nearly 30 turnovers should have done BYU in. There's just no doubt about that. But they've found a way to grind out what I believe is the win of the season to date. Now, there are still going to be wins down the line, Big 12 tournament. Once they get in the big dance, the NCAA tournament, those could become the wins of the season. But to date, this outdoes Arizona. This outdoes the curb stomping of Kansas. This is the win of the season. And let's be honest, a year ago, BYU had Iowa State on the ropes in the second half. If I recall, was it a 16, maybe a 15-point lead in last year when Mark Pope took BYU to Ames, and they faltered and lost that game in pretty tough circumstances. This team, speaking of BYU, had a 21-point lead in the second half, saw it fritter away, and to their credit, across the board, they kept their heads and they prevailed in double overtime. I've got some concern now just looking ahead to the Utah game and senior night with that extra 10 minutes. Guys are run ragged. Dallin Hall was cramping hard at the end of that one. I can believe a lot of guys are going to need a lot of rehab in the next couple of days to get ready for senior night, but you don't worry about that at this point. It's a huge, huge win for BYU. You can't do it without what Richie Saunders did. Was he 15 of 15 with the AW? 15 of 15. Oh, excuse me. He had 15 free throws. My stat broadcast here has got to be updated. I think that he had 15 in this one, but a perfect performance from the free throw line, regardless if it's 13 of 13 or 15 of 15. Perfect for him. BYU as a team, 25 of 31, and that includes 2 late free throws from Keita that, let's be honest, when Keita goes to the line, you kind of have to anticipate if he gets 1 or 2, you'll take it. I got to point to BYU's defensive effort. They held Iowa State to 39% shooting, 29% from 3. BYU for themselves, 44% from the field, 34% from 3, 11 of 32 from beyond the arc. A lot of crazy numbers. We're talking like both numbers that say, okay, BYU should have won that game, and plenty of numbers that say BYU shouldn't have won that game. And I really enjoyed the fight. They fought tooth and nail to take care of it. And they're going to be sitting pretty. When it comes to bracketology, I could see this pushing BYU. The Joe Lunardi, I think bracketology they talked about in game was an 8 going into the contest. A win like this, does that push them to the 6 line? Does it push them to the 5 line? I still think there's work to be done in the Big 12 tournament for BYU if they want to be as high as maybe a 5 seed. Heck, if they were to win the Big 12 tournament, you could probably push to a 4, but that's talk for another time. The other side of this is these two teams, whoever won this game has the inside track at getting the number 4 seed and a double bye in the Big 12 tournament. And obviously that resides now with BYU. So they got to be feeling good about themselves heading to Kansas City. It's been 24 years since BYU last won a conference title. You have a double bye that gets you much further into that bracket there in Kansas City. Could this be the year BYU breaks through? The more BYU keeps doing their thing, I just keep looking at it and saying, you know what? If you're going to doubt this team at this point, I don't know what else you have to doubt about them. Yes, I understand the turnover woes. There were some unfortunate possessions in this game, but there's also a fight. There's also a collective belief with this team. You can tell Kevin Young has these guys believing in one another. You're getting contributions from across the roster. They're going 11 guys deep with a rotation right now. I can't think of many teams outside of BYU that are playing much more than 8 or 9 guys at this point in the season. So it's absolutely incredible to watch what this team is doing. And we'll get to some of these comments momentarily, but the last thing I'll talk about in terms of what I'm taking away from this game is that was some really, really fun basketball. I get that officiating mars it. I said that at the outset of this, that I'm done talking about college basketball officiating. I think it's just garbage across the board. But the bigger point to be made is down the stretch, these two teams were throwing haymakers at one another. And BYU, to their credit, went out there, absorbed every punch Iowa State had for them, and they gave up a 21-point lead. A lot of teams would have collapsed and would not have fought back. But BYU found the motivation, found that extra drive, dug deep, and ground out a major, major victory that's going to sit really well with the selection committee. Hilton Coliseum, the McKell Center, those are considered to be two of the toughest environments in the Big 12 to go and play at, and more importantly, to get wins at. They showed it multiple times during the broadcast. The past 2 seasons, Iowa State was 33-1 at home. Well, now they're 33-2. BYU is unafraid of big moments right now with this team, and that's awesome to watch. This team they're the cardiac Cougs. I said the title of this is Cardiac Cougs. They don't care what the circumstances are. They're riding high, and they should be riding high, because they have found a gear that I'm not sure that anybody, yours truly included, thought they would find this season. Remember, we were talking about a team that were they 2-4 in conference out of the chute? They've now won. Man, got to do math on the fly here. It's like 10 no, it's not even 10. It's like 11 or 12-2 over the last, whatever. Bigger point you made is this team has found the answer. They're operating at peak efficiency, and they're killing it. And that's awesome to see. Michael Higgs, I don't think BYU's ever won in Ames. I think you're right about that. Bronco, I hope they meet Kentucky in the NCAAs. Okay, Mark Pope, BYU. That'd be kind of fun. David Mitchell, can you reasonably ask for a better game on the road against the number 10 team in the country with a 4 seed hanging in the balance? I think not. 4 seed seems a little high for me, but yet again, David, I can't count anything out from BYU. Elaine, watching from Pennsylvania. Jake is great. Hey, thanks, Elaine. I got people saying they're watching from Hawaii right now. So this is really cool to see you guys checking in from all over the country. So a lot of people out there. Jay Beers, I hope we're not an 8 seed. It'll be tough to get to the Sweet 16. They were the 8 seed going into tonight, Jay Beers. You can pencil them in to move up to 7, 6, maybe 5 territory. But that was an 8 seed going into the game. That's per Joe Lunardi. Now, there's a million other bracketologists out there. Hola Keitau. Wow, I'm going to butcher that name. BYU from Hawaii. Let's go Cougs. Blue YU. All right. Appreciate y'all checking in from wherever you're checking in from. But the bigger thing is it's fun to watch this BYU team. It really, you look at what happened in this game, and BYU just continued, like I said, to throw punches. I remember watching last year when BYU collapsed in Ames, and that term Hilton Magic, it was in full effect. You don't fritter away 21-point leads in opposing gyms and come out with victories very often. I have to do some research on that, but I would imagine that if you were to go back through college basketball history and look at teams that had a 21-point lead in the second half on an opposing team's home floor and let that lead get away from them, how many of those teams actually came back to win? I think it'd be a very, very small number. So it's fun to see this. Dylan, watching from Alaska. Okay, 4 seed Big 12. Okay, good point. Okay, thank you, Noah. That's a good point. A 4 seed in the Big 12 tournament. That double bye, that's going to save some extra legs for BYU, because it's going to be a stiff Big 12 tournament. Houston looks like the cream of the crop when it comes to the Big 12. BYU, in theory, if they were the 4 seed, would be on the same side of the bracket as Houston. So you have to be considered on that. Man, swings watching from Kabul. You're in Afghanistan? Okay, swing savvy. You win. You're all across the country there. Michael Higgs, that Kata block was better than LeBron James. I think you're talking about the NBA Finals block that essentially won the title for Cleveland. I think there's a little different circumstance with that. If it were to win like a national championship for Kava Keita, it might match what LeBron did. Kava Keita can add tithing to his NIL from Tate Harmon. Okay, not bad. What's BYU's ceiling? Geez, I don't know. I right now, is there really the ceiling is the roof, to use the Michael Jordan expression with this BYU team? They continue time and time again to stun me. This is a game. Remember, they started this game. Did they score a bucket before the 4-minute? No, the first media timeout actually hit for BYU before they actually scored. I'm going to pull this up right now as I'm talking live on the air, pull up the play-by-play. But the bigger point to be made was BYU, the fact that they scored 88 points without scoring a point or points before the first media timeout, more than 4 minutes into this game, and they had 3 points like 8 minutes into this one, that's pretty impressive stuff. That just shows that this team's got fight, it's got heart, it's got gumption, it's got grit. Use every adjective in the book to describe this BYU team. They are just getting it done out there. So from Antarctica. Okay, people. Now you're just getting okay. Yeah. Well, you know what? Now we're having fun with this. But Landrick, I'm just hearing Provo, LOL. Easy, I'm watching from Mars. Okay, now we're having fun, everybody. But the bigger point you made here, Brad times food. That's an interesting thing. Let me throw this up here. I'm going to throw that up. We are experiencing peak BYU. It's all downhill from here. It's all downhill from here, Jake. Your take. I'm not sure that you can say it's all downhill right now, because the bigger, I think, issue right now for this BYU team is they're peaking at the right time. Now, obviously, legacy, everything the BYU hopes to be remembered for will come in a few weeks' time when the NCAA tournament officially tips off, because BYU's history of late is one and done in that tournament. They've got to get to the round of 32. It feels like at bare minimum to justify this season, but I still think that they can play better. They can do better. Once again, nearly 30 turnovers, and you overcome that for a victory. You fritter away a 21-point lead. There were a lot of things that went against BYU in this game, but yet again, you just go out there and get it done. And free throw shooting critical, 25 of 31 from the line. It was 25 of 28 at one point. Those free throws were critical. Dylan Merritt, we have to make it past the Sweet 16 for once in my life. Well, Dylan, that means that you're younger. You're my age, if not a little bit younger, because the last time BYU went past the Sweet 16, it's Danny Ainge in the Elite Eight. BYU's never been to a Final Four. So it's pretty incredible stuff. Okay, here we go. Devin, no team has beaten a ranked team with 29 turnovers in 20 years. That comes from X or Twitter. Pretty impressive stuff from BYU. So, all right, crazy stuff. Thoughts on Dem in this game? He has his ups and his downs, everybody. The bigger point to be made is Jaeger Demon's game is more fit for the NBA, where fouls, you cannot do what you do in college basketball. And that means like reach in every play like Iowa State was for long stretches of that game. They just simply won't allow it in the NBA. Jaeger is going to thrive in the NBA with the spacing and the foul disparity, like not the disparity, but the different officiating that happens at the NBA level. That's just my personal take. He had very high moments where he got to the rim late in that game on a critical drive and made it happen. That showed his length and his ability to when he puts his head down and wants to get to the rim, he can do it. He is proven to be elite at that skill. So it's a really, really fun thing to watch this team doing what it's doing. Demon has his ups and his downs. Everybody on this BYU roster had that in this game, but the collective whole overcame all that and got the win. So JBR's hit the like, people. Absolutely. Like, subscribe, rate, review, join the podcast. I'm going to have a full edition of the podcast coming out early tomorrow morning. I'll have more thoughts. I'm going to sign off now, go look around and see what I can find bracketology wise. We'll break that down. We'll also talk some BYU football. So there's a lot of stuff going on. I'd pay $300 minimum to beat Utah. Well, that's not a bad take there. We'll see what happens. So it's a big win for BYU, the biggest win of the season, just no doubt. But there are still bigger wins out there on the horizon for BYU. Let's see if they can keep climbing and do something special this year. All right, we're going to sign off, but thank you to all of you for checking in. I think our peak right now, nearly 550 viewers I'm seeing on my end. So as always, thank you for all y'all's support. You guys are the best out there. We've got a really, really fun crew of people here with Locked On Cougars, thousands of y'all checking in from literally worldwide. But as always, thank you for your support. Thank you for supporting Locked On Cougars. And we'll talk to you guys again early tomorrow morning on the next full edition of the Locked On Cougars podcast.